Awesome. So I'll take a lead here. So this is Jamil Goheer, and I am representing Pakistan IT Industry Association as a part of the board member, as a board member, and also leading the global brand and outreach committee as well. On the other side, I represent a business called Kualitatem, that is an independent software testing and QA company that I run. Thank you all for joining us today. Thank you for taking time out, and also thank you to all our esteemed panelists. I'll quickly start with a brief of PASHA, Pakistan IT Industry Association. It's there for the last 32 years. And we had been building step by step the whole IT industry ecosystem here in Pakistan collectively. We are about 1,100 members strong at this moment in time, and hoping for more people and more organizations to join us. Of course, the first thing that we do is building up all the policies to enable IT and technology within Pakistan. And that has to do a lot with the government. The second most important pillar is to create awareness about the Pakistan's IT and tech ecosystem globally. That's where the global, the brand and global outreach part comes in. Then there is a third very important part, which is keeping an eye on where the latest technology is going and how we could be able to build skill set around that within Pakistan. And that's where the skill and capacity development pillar comes in for PASHA. And the fourth one is basically facilitating all our members in terms of how they could be able to grow within this ecosystem by leveraging each other's success as well as experience and exposure. With all of that, I think this session is very much focused on, of course, positioning Pakistan globally, but also building up the skill set within the Pakistan's ecosystem. And that's where I think a few months ago when I started talking to Sadiya about it, the whole idea came in that why can't we really create this kind of a skill set within Pakistan? And she was kind enough to really think through, brainstorm, and then bring this whole panel to fruition as well. So once again, thank you all. We are joined by Salman Sheikh, who is an enterprise architect, had spent more than 20 years in the IT industry, with Salesforce about 15 plus years. Based out of UK, and also alumnus from FAST Lahore. Then we have Faruk Bhagani. He's a very senior sales professional in tech sales for over 20 years and had been with Salesforce and had led sales more than $250 million of the projects out there. Then we have Sultan Ali, who is a senior software engineer over there in Salesforce for the last 10 years, almost, and based out of US and looking into the sales cloud. And we have Sadiya Hameed. She is a principal software engineer within Salesforce for about 14, 15 years. And also based out of US, but also an alumnus from FAST Lahore. I'll quickly go back to all four of you for quick detailed introductions, talk a little bit about your career highlights, and then how you got into Salesforce and how fulfilling and potentially rewarding this whole exercise and entire experience had been for you guys. I'll start with Salman. Once we complete these round of introductions, then we'll move on to our agenda around how Salesforce ecosystem can be tapped in and what sort of opportunities exist and how this community who is part of this webinar right now can benefit from it. Over to you, Salman.
Hey. Assalamu alaikum and welcome everybody. Just checking, can you guys hear me? Hello, Jamil, maybe heads up. Okay, thank you. So introduction about myself. So I am a FAST alumni, as you mentioned, from batch 97 in Lahore. I accidentally got into Salesforce, to be honest. It was very early in my career, I think 2004, 2005. I accidentally
Farooq, can you take a lead from here?
Sure. Assalamu alaikum all. Thank you very much for dedicating a small part of your evening and morning to this session. My name is Faruk Bhagani. I'm an enterprise seller by background and have been doing this for 25 plus years and have worked with very substantive companies along the way, Microsoft, IBM, Xerox, now Oracle, and then Salesforce, of course. So my last role at Salesforce, which I'm currently not at, I left them about 2 months ago, was an account director. I was in the professional services vertical, calling on large professional services companies and representing the entire Salesforce 360 from a product and services perspective. So I am born Pakistani, raised Canada and North America, lived in the Middle East for a long time, very passionate about what we as Salesforce as an ecosystem can do to help improve economic challenges that we face in Pakistan. And we look forward to sharing that story with you today. My specific mandate will be to help you understand a little bit about how to potentially penetrate the Salesforce ecosystem in North America. And with that, I'll turn it over to, I believe it's Sadiya at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Faruk. Assalamu alaikum. I'm Sadiya. I'm, like Jamil mentioned, I'm a graduate of FAS Lahore from 99. And unlike everybody else that went before me, I've been in purely developer track since I started right out of grad school. I also just accidentally happened to land into Salesforce, and I've been with them ever since. At the moment, I don't have as much experience working on Salesforce as people imagine from the outside. I'm a Salesforce developer, so I write software for Salesforce developers at the moment. And my job is basically, at the moment, my team, I lead a team that does works on data science and machine learning for solutions for inside Salesforce developers. So, and I guess, like I mentioned, I've been working here for more than a decade at the moment. So, Sultan, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, assalamu alaikum, everybody. This is Sultan Ali. I grew up in Lahore as well, like Sadiya, and went to school here in Seattle. And been in Salesforce for about almost 10 years as well now. I actually also I wasn't really aware of Salesforce and what their space was, but they did a career open house at their office in Seattle a long time ago, and I kind of attended that. It was pretty interesting to learn about like the actual technology they used to build and different teams and meet with the different teams. So that kind of intrigued me and like made it pretty interesting to join the company. So I applied and luckily got in, and ever since then I've been really enjoying the work here. I work in their Sales Cloud, which is essentially like their core CRM app, the original app I guess they started off with. And also a developer there, so basically build on the Salesforce platform, and it's been pretty interesting so far.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for all this quick introductions. I'll basically request Salman to start with our first part of this session. By the way, this series is basically 2-session series. The first one is basically about understanding what the Salesforce ecosystem is, how big it is, the past, the present, the future, and then also about the potential opportunities within this whole ecosystem that exists. And then the next session that we have will be next week, which would be about how to tap into all these opportunities and what sort of tracks are available and how we can scale within those tracks fast. So that would be kind of a quick hacking session around different potential opportunities that exist and the kind of skill set that people can build within the Salesforce ecosystem. Over to you, Salman. You're on mute.
Yes, thank you. So let me know if you can see my slides.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, let's go. So as Jamil, you have just mentioned, this is a series, or at least for now, a 2-part series, and it's about Salesforce success. And mainly the first session is about tapping into the Salesforce market. As I understand, most of the audience here are either the top management or the company leaders, and they are mainly looking to understand how they can get into this ecosystem, or that's what the main theme of today's session is. So I'll try to keep that in mind when I'm presenting. So let's go to the next slide. So thank you, everyone, and taking time out from your busy schedule. And let's see if we can make this a valuable session. So I've already talked about myself, about Salesforce. Before we go any further, I understand it's not a face-to-face session where I could see interaction. So just to understand, do people even know about Salesforce? Or even one step back, do people even know what a CRM is? So I'll try to keep it very, very brief. The way I explain to people what a CRM is, yes, it stands for customer relationship management, but what really it is a software or a product where you can manage the customer relationship. But what exactly do you mean by customer relationship? The example I normally give is, let's say you want to open up a shop. Let's take a simple example. I want to open up a clothing garment or a street confectionery or a bakery or any business. The first thing I'd like to do is start marketing. I'd be sending out flyers. I'd be putting out banners. I'd be targeting people in the modern world via some kind of campaign, some kind of email. I'd use social media. That's my marketing. I'm going to lure the customer into the shop, into the business. Once they come in, there'll be sales guys standing there, helping out, trying to capture people's interest, and then trying to sell them the product. Once that is done, the customer would go back. By that time, it is a customer. It is a client that has gone into the database with some details. After that, the customer may come back and say, look, I bought this product. I have a complaint. That's now you're going into the support cycle. So very quickly, I talked about marketing, moving on to selling, and finally on to support. This was, and I repeat, was the core model of Salesforce. Since then, we have grown tremendously, and we'll talk about other things when we look at the Salesforce wheel. So this is the crux of any CRM system. They would have some kind of a marketing solution, some kind of sales, and some kind of support. And all of this revolves or evolves around the customer itself. So now let's look at Salesforce as a CRM. So Salesforce is ranked the #1 CRM system for the 9th consecutive year. You can look up the quadrant, the Gartner's Magic Quadrant, and you will see that in various areas, Salesforce is still the leading. This here is the revenue chart, and you can see from 2022, we are way ahead of other competitors in the market, such as Microsoft has their Dynamics. Oracle has what they, after acquiring Siebel, now it's their Oracle CRM system, SAP, and other CRM systems that you may or may not be aware of, like Sugar CRM and Zoho CRM, and there are some small players also in the market, but Salesforce is way, way ahead. So not only that we are proud to be the #1 CRM company in the world, but also there are other areas where Salesforce is leading. For example, it is voted to be the best workplace. I think it was for the last 2 years, at least I know, in the UK and some other countries as well. They have a very interesting, what they call the 1-1-1 model, which is they give away 1% of their revenue to charity. They give 1% of their product to nonprofit organizations, and they give 1% of their employees' time to volunteering activities. So they have a very, very good philanthropy model. And as well as that, they have a very good innovation center that produces new products, which makes us way ahead of our competitors. It is targeted to be the the vision, I think 3-4 years ago, was to become a $50 billion company. I think that was by 2026, and that was about 5 years ago, and we are well on track towards that target. Oops, sorry. So this is the customer 360, or the Salesforce wheel, as I call it. This is our entire portfolio of products and services. So to start with, our best-in-class app, such as the Sales Cloud, that's what Sultan was mentioning earlier. That is the core, or the initial app that evolved. And then we introduced the Service Cloud, where you could do customer service management. Then there is the Marketing Cloud, which allows you to deliver personalized engagements across pretty much every touch point. We also have the Commerce Cloud and Slack. Slack is a recent joiner to our family. Salesforce, by the way, has been on an organic growth as well as acquiring different companies. For example, Commerce Cloud has been acquired as two different companies, two different solutions, and then merged into the product suite. Similarly, the Marketing Cloud was initially we had our own solution, and then we acquired another company and it grew. Slack has now been integrated, and those who use Slack know that you can easily integrate workflows and different apps. So you have a one window operation. You don't have to leave Slack environment. And all of these apps, they run on a very powerful low-code platform. And this platform includes Hyperforce, that is our trusted cloud infrastructure. And it also has the data residency built in. So for lots of countries and lots of customers where there are very strict data compliance rules, we are now fully supporting that, and we can have local data residency and local data clouds in those countries, so the data does not leave that region or that geography. Salesforce Flow, that is our automation. It helps automate complex processes. And Einstein, as we all know, the world of AI and the generative AI is very hot these days. So we also have our own native AI that is inbuilt into the platform with deep learning and predictive insights. And finally, the data clouds. This also has been a very recent kind of addition, which provides a hyperscale data store. And you can now merge or bring in data from different sources all into one system so that you can have very meaningful and strong insights into the customer trends. And then with the help of AI, you can then predict what you should do next with this customer. Next are industry solutions. They take all of the goodness of the app and the platform, and then they help you build the apps that are specific to the customer. We'll talk about that shortly. So going through this, so if you are building Salesforce into a company, into a customer, making it a customer company, as in making it a very customer-centric company, we have the apps we talked about. So I'll go in detail shortly as to what these apps are. We'll talk about the AI, data, and automation, which I briefly again touched about, the industry solutions, and finally the ecosystem, which is how do you get into the Salesforce ecosystem. So looking at the apps, we have the Sales Cloud. It is the #1 platform for sales. It helps businesses in pretty much every industry drive the revenue faster and more efficiently. We have seen where if the customers switch on to the Sales Cloud, they can actually pretty much, I think the number was 29%. Yes, it is still 29% roughly productivity improvement. And what we're also doing is we are trying to now make it even easier to see the value that the Sales Cloud can bring in with all the data predictivity and intelligence, so that even the system will at some point tell you like, okay, do not go after this particular deal because it looks like it's going to be a dead end. Just because of the customer's insight and different interactions, it can help you target or do a better lead scoring and then help you tell you go after these deals which are likely to win, or these deals, if you change your strategy, then most likely the customer will progress further. Service Cloud, this is about service management, field service, self-service, contact centers, interactions with messaging bots, interaction with chat bots, agents. So all of this is inbuilt into our Service Cloud solution. And again, we have seen about 27% lower cost to support if you implement Salesforce, mainly because the system is in the cloud. There are lots of inbuilt solutions. It's plug and play, it's less code, more config. So it's very easier to launch and implement the solution. And as well as because you have bought a product, let's say, as I was giving an example earlier, if you have bought a machinery, let's say a Dell laptop, and I want now the customer wants support, you can easily, if the two systems are together, the sales and the service, you can easily, when a customer calls in, you can see what assets they have, what we sold, when we sold, is the entitlement there, like what level of service have they bought, is the product under warranty or not, because all of that data is living within one platform. Hence, it's easier. You do not have to then sell or integrate different products. Moving on to the Marketing Cloud. So again, this, as I started the CRM cycle journey in the beginning, you normally start by targeting customers or targeting a group of users, i.e. you run campaigns, you personalize the engagements, and then you start capturing their interaction. All of this is now implemented in our Marketing Cloud app. And again, we can see at least 3 times increase in ROI for the customers who do use the Marketing Cloud solution. I'm trying not to go too much into the product. We can have separate discussion if anyone wants to know more about them, but I'm just going to very high level give you a brief of what are the different clouds or the core clouds we have. We have the Commerce Cloud, as the name goes, commerce, so it's for selling. So lots of websites currently are using, for example, I think Starbucks also is using this in the US. So there are lots of customer websites which are using the Commerce Cloud. We have B2B and B2C platforms. And we also have launched recently a Loyalty Cloud, where again, the customers, when they buy things, they can earn points, same like if you are traveling and earning travel miles or hotel points, all of that is now inbuilt into the Commerce Cloud solution. Slack, that is where the productivity of the platform, pretty much from every cloud gets together. So with Slack, customers can and companies can connect teams, apps, partners, all in one productivity platform. Even for this particular project, we were discussing, when I say project, for this session that we're having between myself, Sadiya, Sultan, and the externals, for example, like with Jamil, we were all interacting via Slack. It was our external channel, and we were easily collaborating in that environment. So Slack, even internally within Salesforce, we as employees, we use Slack. It's very deeply integrated with the Customer 360. So now you can have workflows and, like, for example, if imagine you are looking for an approval from your manager, or you are in a customer services environment or a sales environment and you're trying to sell a deal, and all of a sudden you're trying to give too much of a discount, you can integrate that solution within Slack so that it somehow sends a message to your manager or your sales manager, and they can approve the level of discount just within Slack. So you don't have to open up Salesforce. You can have custom workflows and apps integrated, which live within, for example, my timesheet approval requests, or even to create a timesheet can also be worked within Slack. So Slack, not just for Salesforce, but it has lots of plugins, so with external apps as well. So going back to the AI, so now let's look at the second pillar, which is the AI, very hot topic, especially the generative AI, since the ChatGPT has disrupted the market. So our platform has AI natively built, and that's not just recently. It has been there since 2016. Actually, even before that, we had things like lead scoring, so you could see how hot a lead is in terms of, do you think it's worth pursuing from a sales perspective, this particular deal? But since 2016, we introduced what we call the Einstein. This is our AI functionality, and it was the first one in the market for the CRM. And since then, I'll talk about that on the later slides, that we have now introduced even further AI capability within the system. And say hello to Einstein GPT. So that is our version or implementation of the ChatGPT. And this is the very first generative AI for the CRM world. And it can do very smart things. I was just before the session looking at a video which is about what the capabilities of Einstein GPT is. It is very similar to what you see on the screen where it says, at Einstein, create lead. So for example, you could just say, okay, at Einstein, who's my top customer or contacts? And then when that comes up, you could, against that, there may be a button that says, write them an email. And then the system will be smart enough to know, okay, because you haven't met them or you haven't interacted, it'll say, hello, I'm Salman, I would like to meet you. And then you could, again, chat there and say, hey, Einstein, make it less formal, please. And then it will rephrase that wording and say, hey, XYZ, I'm Salman, I work for Salesforce. Would you fancy having a coffee? So it would change just by interacting, chatting with the system. It will change the actions that the system is doing. That is the whole generative, interactive AI world that is coming in near future to us. And then we also have the Salesforce Data Cloud, what we call now the Genie. So what you can do with Salesforce is you can integrate data sources from different systems. So your data is not in silo. You can have your marketing, you can have your, again, if you are using another marketing system or any other internal, like say, even if you have like an invoicing system, let's say some companies use SAP for the billing, whatever systems you have, you can pull the data all into one single platform, which is our data cloud, where you can then harmonize the data. And once it's harmonized, you can then use AI and combine the magic of AI with the data insights and build very meaningful solutions. I was just reading an article last week which someone shared. It's about how Emirates is using Data Cloud, and they're trying to see what flights travel in and out of, let's say, UAE or Dubai. And they look at the trends. They look at what other airlines are doing, how much the traffic is, because they have the data. And they can then, based upon that, decide, should we launch new sectors or new flight paths, and see where they need to scale down or scale up post the COVID pandemic. So all of that is the magic of Einstein, the Genie combined with the data cloud. That is what you get out of the box implementing Salesforce. Here are some of the examples. I'm not going to go into them, but that's how Ford has used in very small time, or Formula One has tried to reach out to 500 million fans across the world, personalizing their experience and things like that. Salesforce Flow, that is our automation engine. You don't have to, and again, yes, we are, or some of us will be here as developers, but you can see with the world of AI, again, it is a sad, but also a very exciting world. In a way, like you don't have to now depend heavily on development. You can pretty much just either look at the systems, which are now low code or no code, or you can look at the generative AI world and then say, okay, write me this, and it'll write you the code for you. But Salesforce Flow is our inbuilt, you can relate it to a BPM, business process management system, where you can automate complex business processes by almost clicks and pretty much getting away with writing almost no code. Yes, you can integrate code, but you don't have to. Salesforce evolved with time, where it was all declarative, as in all config. It was very basic functionality back then. It then became a lot more complex, where it introduced a Java-like programming language. So you could write triggers and classes and make it very object-oriented. It had a very much a front end, very much similar to the GSP, Java Servlet Pages, or those who are aware of the C# and the SP. Very, very similar model. You had a front end, a middle tier of the business logic, i.e. classes, and then the database, which was all in the data tables that Salesforce stores the data. That has slowly started to evolve. Now you don't have to write too many lines of code, because Flow can pretty much do that. There's lots of drag and drop components for the front end. That has evolved the way the Salesforce have been used in the past. Moving on to the next slide. Infrastructure. So Salesforce used to have its own cloud or data centers, which has now evolved towards the Hyperforce. So we are now using more or less the industry. And again, it's not fully live in all the areas, but for example, in the EU, you can see Spring 23, it's going live where we will be hosting our solution onto the Hyperforce, which is a trusted cloud native architecture. It has inbuilt what we call the EKM, the external key management, so we can give the control to our customers, so they can have their own local encryption service provider, and they can encrypt the data. So the data is protected, because that's most of the concern that customers, or at least the big customers, especially in the financial sector, is how do we keep our data in the cloud secure? And that's the main trusted feature of any app these days, that how secure is that app? So we are running our platform on Hyperforce, and we do give native security inbuilt solutions where the customer can comply with their local privacy and compliance regulations. And now we are going back to the main slide. So now I'm going to very briefly talk about the industry solutions that Salesforce offers. So initially, as Sultan was mentioning, the Sales Cloud. So that's how we started. It was just Sales Cloud, then an introduction of service, and then we gave it a flair of marketing. But since then, what customers have asked for is, why isn't there an out-of-the-box solution? If I'm an automotive industry, or if I'm the banking system, or if I'm a wealth management company or a health company, why isn't there out-of-the-box solution where I can just click, deploy, and pretty much the data model, the language of the app, all talks about the domain I work in. So what we have now got is we have created dozens of industry solutions with the help of industry experts to help our customers modernize their business, save time, and especially lower the costs. And these solutions include industry-specific integrations as well. So we do have, like if it's a financial sector, you'd have inbuilt plugins and connectors to the invoicing system, to your contract system, onto your billing system. So all of that is now inbuilt once you deploy a particular industry vertical. And we have built Salesforce, so pretty much any company, any size, and any industry can drive the customer success and make use of the product. So, okay, so far I've shown you different product capabilities and innovations that the system can do, and Salesforce can do so much more. I mean, I once read a very interesting statement. It was about the top 10 software products, and one of them was Salesforce. And what the author wrote about that, and again, it was not in any shape or form sponsored article by Salesforce. It just was talking about Workday, SAP, Salesforce, and it wasn't even CRM. It was just the disruptive softwares, the top 10 disruptive softwares, and one of them was Salesforce. And it always comes back to me, the statement that was written there, which says, if there is a business problem and Salesforce cannot solve it, then most likely it's not a business problem. And it's a very interesting fact, because if you have a data layer, if you have the business logic, if you have the reporting, analytics, graphs, and if you have the front end, then those of us who are from development or IT background, they would understand that that's pretty much any application that you're building needs. And that's what Salesforce gives you out of the box. So you do not have to then build or write your database in Oracle, MongoDB, SQL. All of that is now in the system, and it's more or less point and click. So over to my colleague, Faruk, to talk about the second part of the session, which is about the opportunities for businesses in this ecosystem.
Thank you, Salman. Before we jump on to Faruk, I think this is quite diverse. A company that has started over the last I mean, started in 99, it's been 24 years. And I think it's perhaps one of the earliest, or perhaps the first one that was a software as a service organization,
Yes.
reaching up to about $27 billion of revenue in 2022 and expected 20% growth. I would request Faruk to deconstruct for us that how this 1.6 trillion opportunity exists for all of us out there in the market, and how somebody could be able to tap it in. Over to you, Faruk. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Salman. Great comprehensive overview of the platform that Salesforce has developed. And as the audience will probably see, there has been some method to the madness, right? There's a design that Salesforce and the leadership has been driving towards, and that is to become much more than just a CRM player and to become the customer-facing component for any substantive company and those growing substantive companies out there. So as far as a deconstruction towards the guidance, very ambitious goals, which Salesforce has hit so far. As we are all well aware, we've hit some headwinds in the tech space to date. And what we're seeing is that there's obviously some modification and justification of what's going on in that services environment. In terms of the opportunity, so the way I envision at a top level, and if you don't mind, can we go to the next slide here? I apologize, I'm not driving.
No worries.
All right, thanks. So, and I'll kind of dovetail that question into here, Jamil. So when you look at the 1.6 trillion ecosystem, what you're referring to is not just the direct selling of obviously Salesforce solutions and services, but all of the ancillary effect that's created by that, right? And what that means is when you start developing these platforms and building them, you're building these massive ecosystems around you that will support and promote that capability. And I think we've seen that with other platform players like SAP, Oracle, Microsoft. So in terms of the 1.6 trillion itself, how to unpack that, this is my opinion, by the way, I'm not speaking on behalf of Salesforce. I feel like where we're heading towards an environment where there's going to be much more of an effective interaction between end user and actual supplier and developer of solution, right? And what that means is we're going away from, you have to be super specialized and really understand the nooks and crannies of the solution to leverage it, to a much more open and interactive platform. And what that means is when you're out there developing with the Salesforce ecosystem, you're not just trying to solve business problems, as Salman said, but you're also trying to change the way you address the problem and improve the interactivity between end user and solution provider. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's just a general view that I carry in terms of where Salesforce is going and what they're trying to do. For Pakistan specifically, I think that's where I'd like to kind of drill in. And next slide, please. Thank you. So where I see this happening, and we can see it in adjacent environments, right? We're seeing that obviously in our neighbors. We're seeing that across Southeast Asia. We're seeing that now, obviously, in Europe. Where I think our focal point is and should be is really doing an assessment of what we do exceptionally well, right? From a solution provisioning standpoint. I spent a couple of months ago, a week in Pakistan, meeting a lot of services companies and talking to them, and very positively found that there's a tremendous capability to absorb and learn and turn that back into a services delivery capability across different vendor platforms. So as far as Salesforce is concerned, the best approach, in my opinion, is really understanding within the skills inventory that a current service provider has or is trying to build, and seeing where that crosses over into the Salesforce ecosystem. As you can see, there's quite a few clouds that Salesforce engages in. There's a lot of different platform layers. So what you want to be doing is very effectively thinking about how can I actually get into the space with skills that I have? Because if you're targeting North America is very much focused on specialization. And one thing I did learn about Pakistani companies is we found that there's a lot of these companies that have a plethora of skills and they're very nimble. They can turn things around very quickly and cost effectively. But the US vertical requires a lot of depth and specialization, right? So the first way for us to take our slice of the 1.6 trillion, in my opinion, is really assessing our skills and really focusing in on the clouds that make sense given the current business processes that we're all already involved in. Next slide, please. And if you could bring in the bullets, please. Thank you. So I just want to build on what I was saying in the last slide, right? Is, figure out as a service provider and provisioner today, what do you do really well? So I'll give you some examples of companies I met. I met a couple of companies that said, look, we're really good at nimble platform development capability for industry X, right? And we can put together an MVP and get it out to market in 4 to 6 weeks, right? So when I look at that situation, the first thing I do is, okay, I'd like you to start thinking a little bit about what do you do really well? Seems like you're really good at project management. Seems like you're really good at core development capability. And if you really can do things that quickly, it means you understand that industry vertical really well. So what you want to do then is then figure out, and I've just put here just a brief highlight of the areas of focus for Salesforce, is where does that play into? So if we say that plays into platform, right? What you want to then think about is, how do I take my current skills and get myself certified in terms of a platform capability in that particular industry? And then figure out, how do I expand on that? Can I bring in the certified consultants, or can I train up consultants to get into that space quickly, right? So the unfortunate part is you're not going to always find the magic bullet with your existing skills. You're going to have to experiment a little bit. But by getting into that area of specializations, especially with Salesforce, what you're going to find in North America is customers are much more willing to talk to you because they feel like you've really invested deeply within that specific vertical. Next slide, please.
Did it come through?
I did not yet.
Okay.
There we go. Okay. So I think the thing that's, I would really take away for anybody who's interested in becoming much more engaged in this ecosystem, and this comes from my experience as a seller in North America and seeing the partners who've been successful here that I've worked with in the past. And I'm sure, Salman has also worked with partners over the years, so I'm sure he can lend some credence to some of what I'm saying here. But really interesting is what I find is, if you're an existing services player, you have to think about ways to really start investing more in that specialization capability, right? So unfortunately, we're not all so lucky that someone out here in North America says, hey, I think you're a really good bunch of people. I'm going to give you this project because it's Salesforce related, and I think you'll figure it out. I don't know too many people on this call who have experienced that. I never have. So I would be very factual in saying, and from my perspective, you really need to be thinking about where to bet your investments, right? And where to build on those certifications. Now, that also means you're going to have to be investing in recruiting and keeping the right talent, which I also realize is a very challenging scenario in Pakistan. The best of the best always get taken up into other environments. The way I would kind of develop a stickiness around that is giving people the ability, not only just the ability to earn effectively, but to learn effectively. And that's something we've undertaken as a project lately, and seen that we're attracting people that we wouldn't normally attract into our organization because we're giving them the ability to learn more effectively. So that's just something to think about. I think the best part of the situation that you want to think about in this is when you do build that specialization and capability within that certain cloud or that vertical, you then start to see the ability to, focus and build relationships with people in North America. And that's something I've seen happens very readily with some of our other countries around us, that they come here, they really effectively build those partnerships with first-line players in the United States or the Canadian marketplaces, and they're backfilling them. And what they're doing is they're really building on expertise via backfilling for these folks, right? And then that sets them up to launch on their own over a period of time. So that's something I would think about. A lot of people don't like the idea of doing that because they feel like it may dilute their own brand or it doesn't make them as effective in the eyes of the customer. We look at that as a way to kind of build your knowledge pool and experience set, and then build your own use cases, which can then effectively be turned around for your own projects. And last but not least, we feel like there's a real dedication to resource required. And I know that can be very challenging because our marketplace shifts on a moment by moment basis. So I know that, looking that far down the road can be difficult at times, but what we have seen is people who do that tend to yield the fruit. And that's really important, that whatever you decide to embark on in terms of the Salesforce ecosystem, you have to give yourself the time and the flexibility to grow into that, right? And the reason is also there's a big trust gap that we've seen, right? And in order to fill that trust gap, you need to make sure people see you consistently able to deliver, right? So some of the feedback we get very readily is that, the first or second time is wonderful and then everything falls off the map, right? So we should be really introspective about our ability to sustain that journey. And being practical, we realize also that it's not just about, building something visionary. You also have to keep the lights on. So make sure you've got grounding and coverage to continue feeding this machine to be successful. And like I said, I've seen multiple companies from outside of the United States do exceptionally well in this marketplace. And I think we as Pakistan are very well positioned to do the same. It's just how we approach that situation. I think I'm good at this point. If there are any questions or thoughts,
Awesome.
I believe you can take that from there, Jamil.
Yep. Thank you, Faruk. This is very exciting for all of us to hear in terms of the kind of opportunities that exist. The floor is open to questions for all the participants. You can.
Jamil, I think we've lost your audio.
No,
Sorry.
you're on mute.
Sorry, can you guys hear me now? Of course. So I was just saying that please feel free to write your questions down. We can take them one by one. In the meanwhile, I have a few questions for specific panelists, but others can chime in as well. I'll directly go to Sultan first. You had been a developer with Salesforce for over 10 years. How do you see the whole ecosystem in terms of the opportunity and in terms of the difficulty for programmers to take up a career within Salesforce? I know that there are multiple tracks out there. There's an opportunity within implementations. There's opportunity within business, I would say, analysis within the whole CRM space. But then there's an opportunity hardcore in terms of building products or add-ons or APIs within this ecosystem as well. Your perspective as a developer would be really helpful for individuals who could be able to, I would say, contribute in terms of engineering.
Yeah, sure. So basically, I think that there's a couple of things, right? So for example, there's the one side of people who actually are developers at Salesforce building the APIs and the tools and the platform, which is what I'm part of and Sadiya is part of. And then the other side is basically the developers who use Salesforce platform to build solutions for our customers. So I think for what I've seen is it's a pretty industry standardized framework. So for example, for our front end, we have our own UI framework. It's called LWC, but it's basically built on web components. We have certifications and trails that outside developers can go through and get certified in that. So that's one track. There's also a general Salesforce developer certification track as well that people can start off with, that basically starts you off with like getting you familiar with the Salesforce application, the admin setup, and just a point and click setup, and then goes into how you can customize Salesforce as a developer. So then it goes into Apex and using Salesforce APIs. And that's also basically using any language. I think we have APIs mainly for Java, and then also the Apex language I say for the developed for their customization is very similar to Java as well. So yeah, what I would suggest basically is like start off by looking at Salesforce certifications for developers and then pick one of those tracks, and you'll notice that it's basically very similar to other tools and languages we use for general development as well.
Awesome. Thank you. My next question will be with Sadiya. How do you see the opportunities for females within the Salesforce ecosystem? How's the gender diversity, and how would you like to encourage females to pursue Salesforce in different, I would say, career steps and find opportunity within the whole ecosystem?
Thank you. Yes, I mean, at Salesforce, I think if anybody's heard anything about Salesforce, a few things that they've always had from the very beginning as part of their values is philanthropy and equality. So they publish their own internal employee numbers yearly, and I think at this moment, within the US, our female employees are around 37%, and globally maybe around 35%. And this is the employees that work directly for Salesforce, but then in the partner network as well. So all the companies that we work with, other software vendors that provide, solutions to customers within the Salesforce ecosystem, even their Salesforce has been frequently trying to play the role of making sure that we build diversity there. So in our partner ecosystem, our female diversity numbers are around 39%. And also I saw recently that there is, especially for female-led companies or more in general, more diverse, led companies, Salesforce has other programs that they want to encourage, partnership with those companies as well. So if you're a female-led company, if you are a software developer that's interested in working in the Salesforce system, for all of those, there are opportunities out there for you to participate.
Great. You also mentioned that you are leading a team around AI and ML and working on exciting stuff. Would you like to share a bit about that?
For sure. So that's not directly. So like I mentioned, I don't work directly on the products that we deliver outside. I work for products inside Salesforce developers. Currently, the area I work at is developer productivity. So basically how to make our developers more effective. And one of the first tools that we have is basically a machine learning solution to recommend tests for the code that you're checking in, because at Salesforce, we have like a monolithic code base. So you have 2 million plus tests and can't run all of them before you check something in. So that's one of the first ones. And then we do solutions like if you have, ginormous logs and you're trying to do, deduping, or you're trying to find, analytics or things like that. And then we also have a kind of a business intelligence section of because we have a lot of, data from Salesforce developers. So we also do all those kind of things as well in my team. And we haven't done any ChatGPT based solution, but we have a few things in mind in that space as well.
Awesome. Thank you. So one of our participants has asked the question in chat, Mozam Bhatti. He's asking about what sort of formal competence development options exist within the Salesforce. And his continuing question is that, do we have any stats in terms of roles and options available as an opportunity size within these segment of expertise? Feel free, anybody can answer this question. Salman, do you want to take it up?
Maybe I can give it a go. So I don't think in terms of, so let's answer the first part. So the first part is, I'll just go back to, So in terms of formal competence development options, Now, is that development more from a development resource or the development more from a company's perspective of getting leads or getting into the ecosystem? Just to clarify, are we looking at a resource development or overall your business development?
I think he's talking about the resource development or skill set, different types
Okay.
of skill set within the Salesforce ecosystem in terms of competence.
Sure.
What sort of formal tracks are there?
Yes. So I would come to that. So actually, I can answer that now. If you guys can see the slide. So the next slide was the next steps that we are going to take. So we were going to, in a week's time, we will have the second session of this series where we are going to talk about what is the Trailblazer community. So the Trailblazer, the word, you can correlate it to a resource, as in someone who's in this ecosystem, could be a partner, could be a developer, could be a customer, could be, so anyone who uses Salesforce, we call them a Trailblazer. So how do you get into this community? What are the different career paths? So I want to be a developer. What do I need to learn? What are the certificates like what Sultan was mentioning? What are the certification tracks? Once I become a developer, what's my next step? How do I become an architect? So there are different career paths. And then there are different training options, either self-paced, classroom-led, industry-led. So there are different options on how you can upskill your resource into becoming a valuable Trailblazer. And that's what the next section we will talk about in a week's time. Okay, so hopefully that should answer some of those questions that you have in terms of the resource development.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Salman. I think Mustafa has raised up his hand. Mustafa, do you have any question?
So I have a question targeted towards Salman and Faruk, please. So since Faruk has an enterprise sales background, so since many of the agencies in this call, they'll be giving Salesforce a first time or second time try. Not many of them are doing, right? So from a sales point of view, once they go pitching towards other enterprise solutions, they're big companies, right? Who are deploying and using Salesforce. So they're all nascent, so there are questions like, okay, have you done any prior deployments or not? Stuff like that. So if you can, these are the mental blockers that we have in our conversations. Okay, we can have a team of 50, 60 trained, right? But once you go out in the market, so how to go about those? So that would definitely help us with the thinking point. Thank you.
Salman, if you'd like, I'll take kind of the front end piece of this, and maybe you can attack the technical.
No, you can. So I can just talk about one thing. When earlier there was a similar related question. So what are the so I can break this down. So if you look at the ecosystem, I think I had a slide here. Just let me see if I go back to that slide. I think it was this one. So you can see in the top corner, you have partners, you have services, you have support, and you have App Exchange. So you don't have to go directly to the customer to win a deal. Like you don't have to start by just trying to, oh, I need a customer and I need a deal. And that's where I'm going to train my resources and they'll land there and that'll be my first project and so on. So yes, you could be implementation partners. You could also be in the service industry where you could say, okay, I'm just a support center. Would anyone like small admin related changes to their system? Or you could go into an App Exchange, which is the marketplace where you can make apps and launch. And by the way, that was something when I was a developer, I did very early days of my career. I built a very small app and put it there. And that just builds up the acumen. Like that builds up, like someone knows, oh, there is this guy who built this, so he must be good at it. So similar to that, you could also do that. You could also maybe look at building an App Exchange product, and that will give you the acumen you want in the industry where customers can say, yeah, okay, because they have done that. Yeah, why not we give them a try? So over to you, Faruk, but I just wanted to let you know that not just implementation, there are other ways of getting into this ecosystem.
Very relevant, Salman, and I think good feedback from your side there. Mustafa, what I would comment on, and it's something we're currently helping companies with other ecosystems, is what we say is we as Pakistan have some very distinct cost advantages And I think there is always a dearth of resource, particularly in certain clouds, right, in specialization areas. And we can discuss that more offline. But as you do your research, you'll find that certain clouds, and I'll give you an example of a cloud I came from, which was CPQ and billing, right? So quote to cash is what I did in my initial stages at Salesforce. So because there is not a ton of resource, and it's a very finance, process-driven capability that's required. If you have skills in that arena and you can port them and then provide those skills at a reasonable cost, there are people out there, particularly first line in the US, that will be open to bringing you in to help them with those projects. So, and being very candid, a lot of the very large integrators that exist today in the United States, basically when a project comes forward, they just bring a truck full of young graduates and throw them at a project, right? So it's not like there's this dearth of experience that's being thrown at it, but because of the size and capability of those integrators, the customer will feel more comfortable because they feel like their liability will be mitigated if the project doesn't get delivered. So what I'm encouraging people like yourself to do is bring those resources forward and position them into those integrators, right? Because if you bring people that have a little more knowledge, a little more experience and capability, you're immediately going to build a name for yourself as bringing relevant and capable people to the table. The client's going to see that. You're going to develop your own use cases, which then you can use to launch into your own world. I don't know if that answers the question or if that helps.
And I can add a bit more to it. So going back to, yes, the next session will dive more into how do you get more recognized. But the key thing there is what you just mentioned in terms of interacting or interfacing with those integrators. Like, let's say if I just set up a company today and I just go reach out to one of those integrators and say, hey, guys, I've got 5 developers. Would you want them? The thing is, how do they know my developers are good enough? And for that, there is Salesforce certification, there is Salesforce Trailhead, there are badges and courses that you do, and you get recognized. And if you do say, okay, I've got a developer who is having 5 different certificates in this product, that adds to your to the value that you bring to the integrator versus, oh, I've got people who have been doing development for the last 10 years, but oh, they don't know Salesforce, but don't worry, we'll learn them overnight. Clearly, that's not going to win you a deal. So there are ways on how to upskill your resources and get them either certified or recognized by the industry, which when you present as a company will hopefully land you a decent deal.
Thank you.
And one thing to add there is partnership. Now, I don't know because I'm not aware of that side. Maybe Faruk, is there are ways in Salesforce to become a partner.
Oh, yes.
So when I say there are ways to become a partner, there are different tiers of partnership. There is a silver, gold, platinum. So there are different tiers of partnership, and there is a proper process where you can register as a partner with Salesforce, and then they can. And again, there's a certain criteria for that. There's an entry criteria, and there's a criteria to maintain that level. And then Salesforce can also look at sending deals your way. But again, don't quote me for it, but I know there is a proper partnership route for companies to join Salesforce ecosystem.
So I
Yeah,
would
just
go ahead.
building.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. I just wanted to build on the partner ecosystem thing, the things to kind of be wary of when you approach this. Remember, understandably, a lot of folks want to see very quick ROI on their investments, right? Becoming a Salesforce partner is more of what I would call a marathon. So you've got to be prepared to invest and build certifications. And the quickest way to leverage is, let's say today you're really good in an ERP methodology, right? And you have a really good understanding of that. Is figuring out where the crossover of those skills come into the Salesforce ecosystem, building certification process around that, and then presenting yourself outwardly to partners in other geographies, right? And learning basically on the augmentation, on that, getting on that wheel. And then what happens is you build up your skills, your certifications, and what automatically happens is Salesforce, in a lot of cases, will come seek you out. because it becomes known in the marketplace that, oh, you guys are really good at doing this. And that's what typically we see here in the US. So that's something to track towards and think about.
And one more thing to add, sorry, that came to my mind is Salesforce is pretty much everywhere these days. When you go to one of their big user conferences, be it the Dreamforce, which is their flagship conference worldwide, or their what they call the tours, the world tour, London. Recently, we had the New York last week. You'd see that you'd pretty much see companies from all the different sectors. So for existing IT companies, I would say reach out to your existing clients and see how many of them use Salesforce. If you're already doing support, if you're giving them support services for other projects, maybe their website, see if you can seek out an opportunity for managing their Salesforce system, or maybe a small enhancement, or even a full implementation, a greenfield implementation. But reach out to your existing customers and see how many of them use Salesforce, and that may be a quicker way of getting into the market.
Thank you, Salman. Ijaz, do you have a question? Because I think your question was already answered as well, but go ahead if you have another one.
Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to speak up here. So I'm actually Ijaz and I represent Crescent Tech Systems. So my question was mainly regarding the partnership. Although we are working with clients in US and we are doing customizations and everything, but we were kind of planning towards moving to the partnership program. So I mean, if what I get, like, there's a process for that, but if you guys can refer us to someone, I mean, to whom we can speak to understand more about the partnership program, and then we can grab that opportunity. Thank you very much.
I think there's a related question that by Yavar Abbas. Is it necessary to be a partner first to do an implementation of a Salesforce project?
No.
And I answer that. No, you don't need to be. Partners are recognized by Salesforce if they. So the way it works is Salesforce mainly, and still is, the main revenue is from selling the license. Yes, there is an arm of Salesforce that does implementation, but we try to pass majority of the work towards the ecosystem, which is our partners. For Salesforce to recommend a company, like if I'm selling, let's say, 100 licenses to a customer, let's say, I don't know, Suzuki Motors came and said, I want to implement Salesforce. Salesforce would say, okay, yeah, here are the licenses you need. And by the way, here is a company that we would endorse. They would not endorse a company unless it's a partner. So that's where the partnership helps you. But otherwise, if Suzuki Motors bought those 100 licenses and then they went looking out for the industry and say, okay, which company is there? Let's say Systems or NetSol or Texel or any of the big companies there in the local market who can help them implement, that's fine. Salesforce is not going to prevent them saying, no, you can't do that unless you're a partner. So partner.
Okay.
But it is, sorry, go ahead. All I was going to say, it's highly recommended that you strive towards a partner track if you want to build prominence and profile within the Salesforce ecosystem.
Sure. So Fizan asked that if Salesforce partner program is open for Pakistan-based companies. I think Yavar has mentioned few companies, and Salman is also nodding. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And don't forget, most of our IT companies in Pakistan, they have some kind of an alliance or a foreign existence, be it in America or Europe. So if there are any regional compliance issues, and again, I don't know of any, but if there are any, then yes, you can obviously work with your counterpart in the Western world and build up an alliance with Salesforce that way.
Right. Ahmed Muzammil has asked about Dreamforce or is it
again, I don't know for sure, but I do know that Dreamforce is going to be somewhere in September, and that's SFO is their San Francisco. That's their biggest flagship, you can say, user conference, even though we do have now regional and country-based user conferences. The Dreamforce is yet to open, so I don't think, because internally we also get notified, but yeah, I haven't seen any communication on that, so hopefully it's going to open soon. And
Great.
it is a truly awesome, mind-blowing kind of an event, which, yeah, the scale of the people that come there is amazing.
Salesforce conference, Dreamforce, or Salesforce connections?
Dreamforce is their what we call the Salesforce user conference. As any company has a user conference, Salesforce user conference is called Dreamforce.
Got it.
That's how they started. And then now they also call them world tours. So a UK-based mini Dreamforce would be a UK world tour or London world tour. We recently had a New York world tour. So we have now these tours, which are a mini version of the user conference, but the global one is called the Dreamforce.
And is there something called Salesforce Connections?
I'm not aware of it. Sadiya, Sultan, anyone?
I have heard of Connections. I'm just trying to remember the context that it was in.
Yeah, I believe there is a conference in probably June that's called Salesforce Connections, CNX.
Yeah, I haven't heard of that. That must be a new conference that's starting. I haven't
Yeah.
heard of that.
So that actually my question was like, what is the best one to attend? Salesforce Connections or the Dreamforce? Because if you look into that, you'll find this in June, probably 7 to 8, 9th, they're going to have a conference called Connections.
Okay, I think it
Where
all
is
depends
that? Where does that
on.
going to be held?
I believe it's in Texas, I believe. Yeah, let me check.
Yeah, you know what it is? I know what this is now. I remember this now. It's a partner-driven Salesforce event. So it's all the partners.
Okay.
So wouldn't be a bad option. I believe it's in Austin, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah,
And
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it's driven by partners for partners. So if you're kind of wanting to learn more and understand more about how the partner ecosystem operates and who's doing what, that could be a good way forward. Dreamforce is going to be more if you're really trying to soak up and understand the entire Salesforce environment in and of itself.
Right.
Awesome.
That was exactly the question, because we are planning to launch a product in App Exchange, and the idea behind that is like we are planning to sell licenses, like the instance. So that was my main question, like, how can we pursue with that? So what I'm learning from you is the Connections is for the partners.
Yeah.
And that is something we can learn from it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jaz. I'll quickly go to Meet Anwar. He raised his hand as well. Meet, are you still there?
Yeah, thank you, Jamil. And first, I really want to express my gratitude to Pasha and your good self for putting all this together. And it's really very nice to see Salman after a couple of decades, I would say. So my quick question, and a comment as well. While being in North market in the market since last couple of months, what I have observed that what Salman just said, that truly it's an exciting opportunity for a country like Pakistan to mount on this opportunity to grab the Salesforce market. But at the very same point in time, what Mr. Najum actually is, was a very concerning point. It's about that how do you grab the potential clients out there, because not only at the end of the day, they are asking that how much of an experience you guys have. And in particular, when you talk about the Salesforce engineers, the second question which comes directly is that are there any certified resources on your platform? So I do see that the market has a huge potential, but it seems like a chicken egg problem at the end of the day. So the new entrants like Pakistani companies, I don't know what would you recommend them, that how actually to enter into the market where in the Indian diaspora that they have played pretty significantly well, and they have captured the market unlike anything. So if you can suggest a way out that how to go about it, and secondly, if Salesforce is planning any partnership or anything where the training components can be led by Salesforce guys, or any program nearby future you guys are planning. Yeah,
okay, I can answer part of it, and Faruk, maybe I'll pass the remaining to you. So yeah, I haven't worked in the sales sector much, so obviously I can't comment on how to get a deal. What I can say, what I said earlier, is try to build a portfolio, even it is down to, if you can't do anything, at least have a portfolio of resources. You could say, look, these are certified resources who know Salesforce, even we may not have. So you can look at, again, internally, if you have the resource and you have the time, you can maybe look at an existing project, maybe implement Salesforce internally. For the training part, as I mentioned on the previous slide, I'll mention it, I'll bring it up again. Next time, we are going to talk about training options. We will see from this session how many people are interested, and then we'll gather the interest and then go into the second session. And the second session is going to talk about how to build different career paths. That's mainly for your resources, less about how to get work, more about how to upskill and build competency in your resources, existing or new. And then finally, the training options. And that's where we are going to talk about, okay, how can either, yes, part of it, and that was the whole motivation behind this series, was we as Salesforce, well, not just Salesforce, we as IT resources working in or outside Pakistan, what can we do for our youth development? What can we do for Pakistan? We do see left and right people getting into this ecosystem. It is a very big ecosystem. There is a huge demand. So why can't Pakistani companies enter this? Why should we be restored to just making development websites or gaming products or smaller projects? Why can't we be the next Accentures in this world? Because we may not be thinking that way. So maybe it's time now that we look at, okay, there is a new technology, well, not a new technology, 20 years old technology, but not many of the key players in Pakistan are in this sector. The other thing to add is Salesforce initially, and now the landscape has changed, but initially Salesforce major market capture was mid to small size companies who couldn't afford to build a website or an IT project or an IT software and host it. For them, Salesforce was the perfect solution. Buy 2 licenses, the company CEO and maybe one other person can manage their website or can manage their product. That was the model. And for those smaller companies, smaller IT consultancies was the best model for them to go in and help them build a very small 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 1 month long project. Now big players have entered the market, like so what I showed you earlier, Emirates, Ford, British Airways. And again, that's just few of the names, but they are very big players. Some customers even have up to 50,000 licenses. Now in that model, there is enough for everyone. So I would say you can definitely, there is still plenty out there. It's just that you need to start thinking to go into this sector. And the best way is, 1, upskill your resources. So if the project lands, you're ready. And 2, tap into your existing connections, existing customers, and see which ones use Salesforce and can you get into that customer's portfolio of Salesforce products.
Thank you, Salman. Faruk, do you want to add anything to it?
Yeah, I would say so. From a North American perspective, at least, there's a lot of, I would say, tribal knowledge that there are dependencies on for getting deals done, right? And most Pakistani companies that I've seen that have been able to penetrate and succeed in the North American marketplace have leveraged that tribal knowledge. There are platforms and players now that will help you more effectively penetrate this landscape, right? And you probably need to align yourself a little more closely with those types of players. I will provide my contact details here so you can contact me offline. And because what's going to be, the dependencies are going to be, what are you targeting? What are you trying to achieve? Who are you targeting, right? There's a lot of challenges from that perspective, right? So I can try to help guide people accordingly. The way that, I've seen that has been the most effective is when people use a systematized process to penetrate. And again, I've seen people from South America, India, different companies who've leveraged those skill sets to get themselves more penetrated. And the most important thing to remember is, like anything, when you're actually developing a solution set, you are investing in yourself, right? You're building skills and you're putting yourselves out there to be noticed and seen. Remember that the selling aspect is also an investment that one must make. You have to invest in your sales engine and how you promote yourself and how you put yourself out there. And the more effective you get in that, greater likelihood you're going to drive more business to yourself. So it's not just about the certifications and what you have. It's also about how you present yourself to the marketplace.
Thank you, Farooq. I think I'll take this last question from the audience, and then I'll go with one last question as well. Adil Abid.
Yeah, thank you for the great session. I think I'm laudable. So my question would be like, how can we penetrate to Saudi market, especially the Gulf region? Wouldn't it be a good idea to capitalize the Vision 2030? As I can see, they are expanding tremendously. So this region is, I think there is a huge potential, but I think we need to find the ways how we can penetrate into this region especially. So if anyone can answer that.
Yeah, I can take that. So certainly, I mean, Saudi market or overall the Middle Eastern market. By the way, I was born and raised in Kuwait, so I can relate to it. So in terms of the Saudi market, yes, not just the Saudi market, the entire UAE. I have to say it's a very different market. It's a very, very different market to the US sector or the EU sector, mainly because of the knowledge, the language. Language is the key thing. The way their sponsorship and their funding works. Again, they are pretty much all local companies. So that's another thing, because even if you have a foreign business, they would be nationalized or localized in some shape or form, and they'd have their own local entity. So that is a very different market. But one thing I know is, like, next week, there is a world tour in Dubai, which is, again, as I said, a mini version of the Dreamforce. So maybe that's another place to go and look into what kind of customers are interested in looking at Salesforce as a software. So for example, if I am a big company like, let's take Ford or GMC, and if I already have a mandated CRM system coming from the Western world, even if I open a branch in Dubai or Middle East, I'd be still using the same corporate product, which I'm using across other regions. So if you're looking at penetrating the local Saudi market, for example, the NEOM project or the Saudi Aramco or any of the local companies, which are very local to Saudi or any of the Middle Eastern countries, then yes, it is a tough one to crack. I have to say. I mean, I haven't worked in that sector, but I know that sector works very differently. And I have to say, our neighbors are very much predominant in that region.
Thank you, Salman. One last question from myself. How do you guys, in terms of the kind of opportunities which are out there, and the way different organizations have built up on those opportunities, do you have any kind of a case study or success story that you can relate to, where somebody has taken up Salesforce as a potential opportunity, built on top of this ecosystem, and made roaring success out of it as a services organization?
What country are we talking about? Pakistan itself?
Globally.
Yeah, I've seen multiple scenarios like that, where. So what we found in like I said, in my first ecosystem that I worked within Salesforce, within Quote to Cash, there is, and I can talk specifics here because I know a little bit about the sector. So there was a player called Aptus, right, which was actually internally used at Salesforce, right, for Quote to Cash processing, before our own Quote to Cash came to light. So the tale of two story, different partners working in this ecosystem. Aptus and another company called Conga were very, very prolific in this space. And what ended up happening is we as Salesforce at a certain juncture decided we wanted to enter that space at that time, and then subsumed a lot of our competitors. So the success that those competitors had was through a lot of their partner space. And what you saw is these partners, and many of them were offshore. What they did is they realized that the direction of where this segment was going, and then they moved to the Salesforce ecosystem. And they were very openly welcome to the Salesforce ecosystem because they had the baseline process skills that were required to be successful. So in fact, one of those companies that I worked with and know personally, within 6 years grew to a $25 million business and then was sold. So, and you'll see numerous capabilities like this. And guess where their back office was? India. So that being said, there are situations like that. I think Pakistan, as we become more focused and more stabilized around, these types of projects, you'll see more and more of this happen. In my opinion, it's not going to happen tomorrow, but it's going to start happening over time.
Sure. Thank you, Faruk. And this also takes us towards the closure of the session as well. I would like to say a big thanks to all the panelists out there, Sadiya, Sultan, Faruk, and Salman. Thank you for all your invaluable experience sharing, as well as all the details around helping us understand the whole ecosystem. We would love to carry on this spirit and move on to our next session next week for all the participants. We have this whole, I would say, two-series session structured in such a way that if you are able to successfully move beyond this, we do have a workshop plan as well, as Salman mentioned. So let's see how we could be able to really get the best out of the second session that Salman will be taking up next week. We'll be sharing the details, and we will take on from there what sort of roadmap we can define for building up a structured way towards creating this workforce here in Pakistan, and see how Pakistan could be in the next few years able to tap in within this whole ecosystem. Once again, thank you all. Take care. Have a good evening, good morning. Bye-bye. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you.
Okay.